Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I just want to thank everybody for all their support. Our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's because of you. You're sharing our podcasts with your family and friends, and we just want to thank you so much for doing that. We've gotten many of you have reached out to us, letting us know that how much you've enjoyed it, and some of you have gone to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. But I would say most of you are listening right on your phones. Whether you can actually download our free app, Boomers Today, on your iPhone or Android phone. Many of you listen to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher. There's a lot of them online. So we're on pretty much the majority of the podcast stations online. So again, thank you so much. And I think I know that you enjoy the show because we have such great guests on our show. And today is no different. We have with us Katharine Este, who is a young 86, is also a PhD, and is a best-selling author, practicing psychotherapist. She's a widow, a mother, a grandmother, and an activist for aging well. She's on a mission to dispel myths about old age and to end ageism, which limits and undermines the most experienced among us. She lives in a retirement community west of Boston. We'll also discuss her recent book, Eightysomethings A Practical Guide to Letting Go, Aging Well, and Finding Unexpected Happiness. Katharine, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for having me, Frank. It's a pleasure, and good morning.
Yeah, well, good morning to you, too. Yeah, and as people that could be listening, it might be good evening, it might be good afternoon, but good morning to you. Yeah. So, I mentioned to you we had a chance to talk a little bit, and I mentioned to you that I've written a book as well. And so it's always interesting to me to hear kind of what really what was the catalyst of you writing your book. You have a wonderful, wonderful background, but I'd love to learn more about that.
Well, it actually started when I turned 80, and I was in something of a funk. My husband was not doing well. He was failing. I had a couple of things wrong with me. And kind of the turning moment was I went on a hike with a bunch of my grandchildren to a little mountain that I had climbed for 40 years. And it never occurred to me that I couldn't make it. But I started out on that hike and I fell. And then I kind of was feeling out of breath. And when I got to the part where you had to climb a steep incline, I just had to sit down on a stump and think. I realized I wasn't going to make it. And it was just this moment where it just descended on me that I am old, and I had not really thought about it. And I just sat there, and the kids went on up the hill. They scampered along, and I was on that stump. And I kind of was in such a funk. That lasted for a couple of months as I kind of coped with this sense that I was not able to do what I'd done before. And so after a month or so, though, I decided, well, I've got to find out. Somebody must have the answers to being over 80 and what you can do and not be depressed the way I was. I was feeling kind of blue. So I started interviewing people, and as I started, it just was so interesting. I met some people that were doing wonderful, exciting things, had purpose in their life. And I decided, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do this and really find out what it means to be in your 80s and what are the possibilities. And I did. So that's how it came about. And so it took me 3 years and I interviewed 128 people in their 80s, but I also interviewed a lot of boomers because they are the children of people in their 80s. And
sure.
So I interviewed them, and that's how the book started. And I have never been in that same funk again since, even though I've had losses and other things have happened. But But so the book itself was a big uh, boost for me.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you this again, but how can people get the book?
The book is on Amazon. That's an easy way, but it's also on, in bookstores, and they can find out it's available, anywhere where you buy your books.
All right, great, great. So, I mentioned when introducing you that you're on a mission to dispel the myths about old age and to end ageism. And I'd love to know your thoughts there, because I know ageism is a huge problem in our country and certainly around the world.
Yeah, I think our culture is one that just values youth, and people try to look young, and they spend all this money trying to get rid of wrinkles, and they feel it's a compliment when people say, "Oh, you don't look your age." I think my mission is to say that this is what aging is, and people, when they tell me you look great, I say, well, I am 86. That's what 86 can look like. And so I think that we have a big challenge in front of us in this country to educate people about what aging looks like now. I mean, if I think of my grandparents, when I grew up, I dreaded aging, because my one grandmother had broken a hip and spent 10 years in bed, and a grandfather had a stroke and he spent some years in bed, and it didn't look like it would be, it looked awful to grow up and be old. And I think today people still dread. I mean, it's almost everybody dreads being old, and they say things like, that they just don't want to be it, and people say, well, if I got to be like so and so with a walker and maybe hearing aids, just shoot me, I'd rather be dead. And of course they won't feel that way when they get there, but we've got a big education project and I'm on my mission to let people know that there's so much good news that people haven't caught up with. They're still believing old debunked myths. So there's news from just the experience of people that are living it. I'm having a great time at 86, but there's also new science that people don't know, aren't aware of, and so that has changed what it means to be older. And so the boomers, your audience, have much more to look forward to than they can possibly imagine. They're still dreading old age.
So, I look at ageism. I know you expressed it in your own words, but I look at it as people that look down upon the elderly. That's what I'm talking about as a concern. Do you think, have you experienced that yourself?
Well, I do have experienced it. I mean, I was in a business, and by the time I was 68, I realized I was old to be in a consulting business, and I think that most old people, and especially old women, feel they become invisible, and that people don't. They're sort of off to the side. And when I interviewed people, they would sometimes say they go to get invited to a family event, but then they're kind of put in a corner, and the real life of the party goes somewhere else. So I think that's the stereotype that old people it's their time to get off center stage. And I think it's my hope to we, of course, at the national scene have a lot of old people on center stage with our president and our former president, and
Right.
Almost all the characters are elderly, but I do think that there is this. What's happened is amazing, so that people in their 80s, when I started interviewing them, they are pain-free. Modern medicine has changed what it's like to be, the people can take walks. They can, most people are, they get hips and knees and cataracts. People that can be in tip-top shape and pain-free in their older years. So that's very good news right there.
Yeah. Let me give you my theory on what elderly people should do, or it doesn't necessarily have to be elderly people. Instead of going out and getting rid of the wrinkles and doing all that. Just tell people you're at least 10 years older than you really are.
And then they say, oh, you're a miracle. You're a
yeah, you look wonderful. If you told people you were 96, they go, oh my God, really? So, anyway.
That's a good tactic. I know.
Yeah. So you are 86 and you're a practicing psychotherapist. And wow, that's fantastic. So,
and I do make the practice. What I do is just say, when I'm giving a talk or something, I say, I just come right out and say, and I'm 86 years old. And then I tell them, and I say, and I weigh 138, just to sort of set the tone that why do we spend all this time not telling people how old we are?
Yeah, I so agree with you. Yeah. So people must ask you this. So I'm sure you've been asked this, but what gives you the drive? You're a practicing psychotherapist at your age, which I think is fantastic. So what gives you that drive?
Well, for one, I feel good. I mean, my psychotherapy practice brings me a lot of satisfaction. I'm dealing with people often in pain, but what's exciting for me is I feel I can contribute to their well-being. And when someone feels better, or we make some, they really work through some issues, it couldn't be more of a pleasure for me. So I want to keep contributing, and I always feel better, and if I have a little, something wrong, a wound that's healing or a little something, it takes my mind off it. So I think having something that is like a place I contribute is what everybody needs to do. And it doesn't have to be for money, but right. I think the people that are doing volunteer work or something like that, or have a purpose, or painting pictures, whatever, that makes for them aging well. That's kind of a key component. And we need to kind of reorganize too, and make more spots for older people to contribute.
So your the clients you work with, or your patients, is it similar age group, or do you also provide guidance for a younger audience as well?
No, I have a whole range. My clients at the moment range from being in their 20s to being in their 70s, and actually, in their 70s. So all ages, and I do couple counseling too, which that really keeps me on my toes. That's complicated as a therapist. It's so I like that, and so I feel it's like doing exercise routines. It keeps my brain going, and I think part of it is good luck. You have to say, in the aging thing, people age so differently. I mean, there's the people that get dementia, which is sad. And then people that have other things that have just come that are no fault of their own. And right. I think I was just blessed with, I've always had a lot of energy. And so I have less energy. Now I'm recently started taking naps. I take a nap every day. So that's a big change, because I used to run through and just long things. But
that's not, but though, in the research I've done, as you know, I work in the senior care industry. Taking a nap during the day is not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I've got it down, so I seem to just take something like 15 minutes to half an hour, and it's great. And,
that's wonderful.
And I'm a good. So that, I was going to say, the other good news I think people don't know about, Frank, I'd like to mention is people don't know about the aging brain, that the aging brain has less stress, less anger than a younger brain. And if you think about it, you'll see that people aren't as intense and explosive as they age. I mean, I see that in the couples here in my retirement community. I see it in my older clients, the ones in their 80s, that people get, there is a calming effect within the brain, which makes life much simpler in a way, to just have that edge not kind of taken off. And people don't know about that.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah. It actually makes me feel good you even said that as I get older. So that's great.
Right.
Yeah. So, Katharine, we're going to just take a real short break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about about handling loss. I mean, as you age, there's loss. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that a little bit, okay?
Oh, that sounds great.
Great. So I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, nursing, or if you just need an advocate to get advice from, a local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a complimentary 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you go directly to their website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. I wanted to, and so we're back with Katharine Este, who's a PhD, best-selling author, psychotherapist. So Katharine, again, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. So I want to talk about something people, maybe might be a little uncomfortable, talking about, but we all deal with it. I've dealt with it. You've dealt with it. And that's with dealing with loss of loved ones, friends around us. And how do you, so as we age, we experience more loss. How do you best handle that?
Yeah, well, that's a critical question, and I have come to the conclusion that the essential skill of aging well is to learn how to grieve and mourn, because that's something we're not taught. And so, but it is so important, and that the people that can do it, that know how to, because as you get to be in your 80s, the life expectancy is 80. So about at least everybody that's in their 80s has lost friends and maybe their spouse. I lost my spouse. So you do have to know how to grieve. And most of us, as I say, weren't taught how to do this. So I've developed a model that I've used with my clients, and I've used it with people that I'm working with in other capacities. And it is been, they find it useful. So it's a 4-step model. And would you be interested in me?
Yeah, of course we would. I personally, I'm interested, and I think our listeners would be interested. So great.
Okay, well, the model is that the first step, it's got 4 steps. The first step is to kind of name the loss. And I think recently in the pandemic, we had losses that weren't, we all know if we lost a person that we need to grieve it. But we, in our life, especially as we age, we have to grieve our aging. I think the boomers, that that's a kind of constant thing, that to grieve that you're not, can't do what you did. You may not be able to hike to Mount Kilimanjaro. You may not be able to run the marathon. So you have to, and then sometimes as you age, you have to get a hearing aid, or you have to get a cataract operation. And each one of these changes as you're aging is a loss that has to be grieved. So the first thing is to name it and recognize it. And the second thing is, most people I know are kind of stoical. I mean, there are a few whiners, but mostly people are stoical, and they say, well, I shouldn't fuss about this because so many people have it worse than me. Think of all the people in Africa, and think of those people, that are in those refugee camps. I shouldn't even say anything, but it's not true. For our mental health, we've got to grieve. The second step is to really, if you're, say, grieving the fact, we'll take somebody who has to use a walker now. That would be somebody that's usually in their 70s or 80s. They have to think about what it is they're losing. They have to kind of imagine what they expected. A lot of people say, well, I expected in these golden years that I was going to be playing a lot of golf, and now it's harder for them to play. And so it's often dashed expectations, and they just need to think about it and recognize what it is that they've lost, what exactly they lost. And then the third step, and this is what our culture doesn't teach us how to do, is it's learning how to feel what you feel, to feel your feelings. So it's giving yourself the permission to, and I tell my clients, just take 5 minutes. So your dog has died, which is huge in people's life. All right, just let yourself feel what you really feel. And I've had a lot of people whose dog dying is as important as a parent dying, believe it or not. But anyway, so I say take 10 minutes and feel what you feel. And this is the mourning stage. But then think, what else do you feel? And sometimes people feel relieved. I mean, if you've been caring for the dog for years and it's hard work, or they feel anxious, or they're guilty that maybe they should have done more, or they're relieved. So it's letting yourself feel what you really feel. And I tell people, well, grieve and grievance are connected words after all. Yeah. So that's the third step, is mourning. And some of our religious institutions help us with this, but lots of people now are unaffiliated and they need to create their own rituals, which might be putting up a photograph or playing some music that the person liked. And I think, but it's taking the time to actually have a process around the loss. And the last thing I tell my clients and the people that I'm working with is that you need to figure out the meaning of the loss, to make some meaning out of it, and do some action steps. I mean, translate your grief into action. And people say, well, I don't get how you do that. It's not clear to me. What do you mean, Katharine? And so I'll give you a couple of quick examples of.
Great. Yeah. Love to hear them.
Okay. Well, the one is like when I couldn't go last year to my granddaughter's 16th birthday. She lived out of state. That was the time during the pandemic. And so how I decided to grieve that was to realize, well, what I really grieved was I wasn't all that close to that particular granddaughter. And so I sort of took it upon me, having missed the birthday, to kind of to call her more often and to really pay attention to my relationship to her, and that it didn't all depend on being at the birthday, that it was other ways to connect with her. And that worked. I translated my grief about the birthday into connecting with her.
That's great. And how's that relationship gone with your?
Oh, it's gone great. And we're, and now actually I am going down this year to her graduation from high school, which will take place on June 10th. And it's going to be, so I'm excited about that.
That's great. That's wonderful.
And another friend of mine, my new partner, couldn't go to his college reunion, which was a loss for him. And so he did sort of the same thing of trying to think, well, how do I translate this? And he did two things. He decided to send some money to the college to support the theater program. He'd been active in theater in college. And he also decided to call his, he'd had about 4 roommates in his freshman year, and he was still close to 2 of them. So he called them, and, which he didn't do that often. And so it's thinking about some way to actually figure out what means something to you. And how do you want to make your life different? And it may be, and how you kind of a loss always teaches you what you really value. And so if you take the time, then you can say, well, I want to have more of this. So I think that the act of paying attention to our grief is a simple, but it's very powerful and effective. If it's going to work for people if they actually take the time and pay.
Those are great points, wonderful examples. So, if we have, if any of our listeners, are thinking right now, wow, I'm dealing with this with my mother or my father, and maybe they're going through kind of what you went through during that period right before you wrote the book.
Yeah.
And you start getting a little down.
Yeah.
Maybe health is declining. They're not able to do some of the things they enjoy doing. So what words of wisdom can you provide to those people right now?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think if they really see their parent looks depressed, that, depression is not part of the normal aging. And so that if they really are in a funk and, having trouble getting out of bed and really it's interfering with their life, they should take them to the doctor and they may need some Prozac or something to give them pep them up. But basically, I think that we all need to be talking across generations in a new way, that we need to learn how to ask the questions. And in my book, I have a whole section on conversation starters, because so many of us avoid the really serious questions, and it's not all that hard if you have some thoughts. So if you're worried about which many people are, their 82-year-old father, say, but they don't quite know how to bring up things, and they're maybe worried that they should think their parents should stop driving, and they don't know how to say that. So I think I try to give them courage to really that these things can be talked about, and kind of point the ways on how to do it. And I think all of us have a lot more to learn about connecting with people across a generation, and we all need some help.
Right. Great advice. Boy, I could talk to you for all day long, but unfortunately, we're kind of out of time here. So, Katharine, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today.
Well, it's been a pleasure for me too, and I could talk longer too. I would. It's been a fun half hour here.
Great. Well, again, go to Katharine's website at www.Katharine Esty, spelled KATHARINEESTY.com. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. Be safe out there, and we'll talk to everybody real soon.